Okay, here we go. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I hope your summer is turning out to be everything you expected and more. I am really grateful for everyone's resiliency as we continue to navigate through the pandemic, and we continue to address some of the newer guidelines, and we share information among the other schools and learn some of the best-in-class processes that we should be looking at to implement moving forward. As we get started today, I'm going to share my screen with you and try to make this flow a little better. All right, does everybody see a screen? Blue screen?
Blue screen.
Okay, there we go. We got a few nods there that I can see. All right, well, you'll remember this from our earlier discussion, the 4 phases of the reopening framework that's been presented via the governor. And we are currently in phase 2, the relaunch and the pilot of programs that have been shut down. And basically where we are now, we have attained the supplies, the PPE that we are anticipating needing for the fall. We have the sanitizing materials either in place or on order for the fall as well. And where we are right now in terms of programming, there are 3 programs that are tied to more technical education where the students were engaged in the spring semester, and when we shut down, they were basically put on hold. And where they are now, the part of the programming really enables them to move forward to qualify to sit for their professional certifications. And specifically, we're talking EKG, we're talking the emergency medical technician program, and the aviation maintenance technology program. EKG has already resumed, and this is keeping to those small group configurations, using the PPE and continuing to keep social distancing and self-certifying before you come on campus that you are healthy. Next week, we will actually ramp up with the aviation program for cohort 6, which would keep us below the 10 student threshold, and the EMT program will be starting shortly thereafter, I think next week. Where we are in terms of the staff and the move to gear up for the fall semester is beginning Monday, July 20th. We will have limited public hours for registration, advising, and business office functions that will be clustered in the Grossman Commons. And this will be run from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Building access will remain based on a Prox card. We are encouraging students to make appointments before they come. However, for those who show up without appointments, they will be greeted at the door. They will be verified that they have their mask on and that they have done the self certification of their health. At which time, as soon as a person is available, they will be taken inside to meet with the appropriate people to go through the function that they're looking at. The remaining buildings across campus will remain on lockdown using the Prox card. People know if they're coming in now to do certain functions within usually the business office, enrollment management, and facilities, that can continue. And for faculty that are in need to go into their office, that is also available using the Prox card during business hours. Over the next few weeks, we'll be awaiting more information on phase 3, if the governor is going to give the green light for us to move to that phase. We will be working with the supervisors, and this will be Chris Clark, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, and Joe will be meeting with the supervisors to map out the returning of staff to campus to perform their function. Keep in mind, when we're talking about the returning to campus, we are still looking at continuing the telework operation on a scale into the fall semester. We acknowledge from the public health perspective, this becomes a means to minimize some of the risk that we have with the potential for more people at one location. And we're also looking at, when we schedule people, they would be in for multiple days at a time so that we're not constantly changing in and out who's in a specific office day to day. Again, looking at ways to minimize the risk and exposure to staff and to the students as well. The key objective is, as we move forward, it's responsiveness to the students in terms of their needs, whether it's enrollment, advising, some of the mental health issues that may come up, the wellness issues, that we can actually respond to people in a quick turnaround time, whether it's via the internet, via the telephone, email, or physically in person as we begin to ramp up. So we continue to, I'd say, evolve through this as we make modifications, and we will certainly be modifying it as we move forward. Just a few other things I wanted to share on the testing. This report actually came out last week. There was a subgroup of Massachusetts higher education, college and university leaders that were very engaged in working on the testing issue, and how do we monitor who's actually been exposed, and what aspects we need to put in place. The recommendation that has come back is basically they are grouping higher education institutions into two groups. One is mainly the residential type campuses where there's in-person, there's more contact, more activities going on, a higher risk exposure. The other is the non-residential colleges where there's the anticipation is we're in the medium to low risk categories. At this particular time, based on where we are with the capabilities of testing, the recommendation is that we don't fall into a category that would be providing the surveillance testing to people when they come onto campus. And at this particular moment, we know that there have been some very aggressive procurements that have been sought out. And there is one currently through the Broad Institute in Boston, but it's still a proposition that would be very expensive for the community colleges, and there's also a timeliness of getting the results, and then really deciding what to do as you get the results. What do they mean 24 hours later? What do they mean 3 days later? And if we're going to test, do we not need to look at a more bona fide process where there's a mechanism in place where we're we're doing it with some regularity, so we have a better picture. So at this moment, based on the advice that we've received through the working group, and that the other community colleges and the state universities are looking at using, we don't see the testing as viable for the community colleges at this moment. We will, however, rely on people to do self-certification before they come on campus, basically verifying, as we've outlined in the material that's on the website, in the COVID area of the website. You're validating that you're feeling well, you haven't had a temperature, and you don't fall into any of the risk categories. And if you do, you're encouraged to seek medical help for follow-up. In addition to that, we would require everyone coming on campus to have the face mask and continue to keep the 6 feet minimum spacing. So as I move forward there, let me pause for a minute, shifting gears slightly. Chris Clark, I want to introduce, he's our new Vice President for Finance and Operations, has come on board to dive right into a pandemic, and is taking a leadership role in beginning to pull the details together for the plan that ultimately will get down to the department level, so we know who's expected to be in and when, and the turnover. So Chris, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, President Cox. Christopher Clark, you can call me Chris. I like being referred to as Chris. So if you see me on campus, Chris is fine. I have about 30 years of public administration experience, mostly in the municipal sector, most recently in the town of Harwich as town administrator. So I come over to higher ed with a background more as a generalist. So today is day 12, so I'm fairly new, but really, as President Cox said, the 2 real focal points that I'm working on is, and I actually have here, thanks to the efforts of Arlene and Joe McKinnon, Arlene Rodriguez, a draft of a plan so that when we do reopen the campus more, we can do it in a safe, professional manner. So we have those pieces. And then I have toured the campus. I think I've seen all the different buildings. I'm waiting to see all the people once we get back open fully. And then we can move forward. But I'm working on also the Science Center. So I intend on hitting the ground running and working as hard as I can to help the college. And so far, so good. And I look forward to meeting more and more people as we move forward.
Well, Chris, if you scroll through all 8 pages here, you'll get a good handle on all the faces of Cape Cod Community College. Although some are sitting in the shadows, I would add. Anyway, thanks, Chris. Patrick, can you give us a quick update on where we are with the website?
Yes, thanks, President Cox. So if you have not seen it yet or have not had a chance to peruse it, the new college website went live last week. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about where we are with it and where we are going with it moving forward through the summer and then as we head into fall. It's the product of, and I've talked about this a lot when given the opportunity, it's the product of well over a year's worth of work. It's an immense project to put together a college website, and doing it during a pandemic was a fun exercise for those of us who were involved in it. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to give a huge shout out to Chris Pauck and Chris Brizzi and Rick Wixom and Eric Sheffer for the work to get it done. It's product of an awful lot of time and a lot of work from really talented people. So where are we now? The website is live. As is sort of the case when a website does go live, there's bugs that we're working through. There's content that we're working through pretty much round the clock right now. I'm very appreciative. Many of you have reached out to me to hit me up about content or ask questions about where things are now or how the search functionality works. We've worked through some issues, some pages that got lost in the shuffle that we brought back. So your feedback has been excellent. And I'll say again, the website's the byproduct of your feedback. So many of you were kind with your time early on in this process to give us feedback on what worked about the old site and what didn't work about the old site. So faculty and staff, administration, and many students who gave feedback that got us here. So it's a work in progress right now as we work through it and get the content where it needs to be. And the website is a living document. So again, why did we do the new website? Primarily, we did it because our old website was in an extremely old CMS, a content management system that needed to be upgraded and needed to be updated. We had a lot of different editors on the site from a marketing communication standpoint. That's not great. You wind up having many different voices instead of one cohesive voice. We wanted to cut down on redundancy, make it easier for prospective students to enroll and understand how to go to college. And when we look at the website, it's our #1 marketing tool. And so our primary audience for this is prospective students. So we have, we've moved a lot of stuff that was there for faculty and staff over to our portal, to the faculty staff portal, so that the audience is clear. When someone goes to our website, it's very student-centric. It's how to become a student, and then when you're here, how to access the resources. So as we move forward now that we are live, we continue to edit, we continue to tweak, we continue to take feedback on how we can continue to make this work better. There'll be training opportunities for those who had access or need access for editing soon. Several people have already reached out and we're working through that. Part of the reason we do move to a new website is we also gain a little bit of editorial control. So while we'll limit the number of editors, we'll actually be going through a process where if you have access to edit the content, it'll actually go through an approval process through communication so we can work with you on developing content for those of you who are going to be doing it. So if you have questions or feedback or anything like that, please reach out to us. Our focus now, if we're looking forward over the next couple of weeks, is addressing the directory system, which IT is working really, really hard on to get the directory up and running to the capacity we want it to be at. Our live chat, which there'll be a live chat on the front page of the website, primarily for prospective students to get a hold of admissions and enrollment personnel, but also IT. And our search function. And our search function, I think, is, from my opinion, as we work through it, is going to be the sort of the premier function of the website. It's a third-party service. It allows us to have access to how people can search and what gets pulled, rather than using a Google search, which our old site did. So we can customize what people are seeing as it comes up. So you go in there now, it starts autofilling. If you type in BUS, you'll get our business degrees, you'll get the business office and things, that are related to that. So that's great because it becomes a sort of a rolling ball. We can monitor what people are searching and what prospective students are looking for and adjust results accordingly. It gives us a little bit of editorial control over how people are navigating the site. And the search function is honestly where most people are turning to when they go to a website. So again, appreciate your feedback. If you have comments, please reach out to myself or Chris Pock, and we will work with you on addressing the site.
Are there, Patrick, I know you have another commitment you have to go off to, but are there any quick questions regarding the website? Are there any long and involved questions involving the website? Okay, never mind. I'll let you off the hook on that one. Thanks.
Send me an email and we'll be happy to look through.
It really does look awesome. Nice job, Patrick.
Thank you.
There you go.
I should go out on a high note then, right?
What's that?
I should go out on a high note, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the shared screen here, hopefully. There we go. All right. So just a few other things I wanted to try to share with you. If it, maybe not, I've already shared this with you. Oh, come on. Oh no, I'm spinning. Can you all see that?
No.
No, okay. Well, that's good. At least I have voices. I've lost everybody.
We're here.
All right, bear with me for a second.
What slide number are you on? I have it.
It is slide 7. It should come up.
There you go.
There. Okay. So do I have it or do you have it?
All right.
I think I'm up.
You're up.
Okay. Well,
You're
there.
down. 7.
Okay. So, voila. All right. Yes, this is unrehearsed, so you get it all live. I just wanted to share some developments that have occurred over the past week or so. The first is we are the only institute of higher education, public institute of higher education in the governor's capital investment plan for FY21 that has construction money for a building, and that's the Frank and Maureen Wilkins Science and Engineering Center. So the administration has continued its commitment so that we can move ahead. And I know everybody is sort of chomping at the bit on when are we going to do the groundbreaking. There's been some issues in timing related to permitting and how to get around some of the concerns connected to the pandemic, but I think we've pretty much resolved that, and we're looking at actually building out the access rampway to the lecture halls, and that work should actually begin next week. We should see some work there. Once we get some of the mitigation underway, we will have the groundbreaking, and we're looking at that likely the beginning of August. And we are trying to work through the governor's office, DCAM, and our state delegation to make sure we have as many representatives as possible, along with the foundation and the donors that have made this all possible, and the faculty and staff who will reside in this new home once we all get it together and come back the way things will eventually work out, I'm sure. So anyway, that said, I just go back to remind everybody when we think about how the state looks at public higher education, there are the 3 segments: the community colleges, the state universities, and the UMass system. And when you look at the distribution based on enrollment, you see that the community colleges are running a little less than half of the total population, with the state universities and UMass being relatively stable over the past 5 years, and the community colleges a little bit more tied into the broader market. And as the economy came back, we are generally counter-cyclical to the market. The market got super hot, hard to believe, just a few weeks ago, and people had a lot of alternatives, and enrollment started to decline. So the snapshot there, you see we have about 80,000 students overall in the mix. So when you're thinking about that, keep in mind that when we look at how the state allocates its funding, especially around operations, it's generally 50% goes to the UMass system, 25% goes to the state universities, and 25% goes to the community colleges. So this, which I seem to have lost, go back and try again here. Okay. If you look at this screen here, this is a small project initiative that just rolled out last week. And basically it set up the parameter that the limitations are $375,000 for each community college and $975,000 for each state university. And UMass gets its own pot of money in this case, and they get to determine how they want to use that. That's up to the UMass system. My point, why am I telling you this? Because this all goes back to, how do we build the picture when we're talking about institutional inequities And when you think about the students that we serve, sometimes when we look at how we allocate the funding, we have to ask the question of, has the way that we've historically done it been the most correct way? And if there's any doubt, then the question should be, do we want to make the way we've done it even more onerous by shifting even more money away from the community colleges? So this was sort of a one of those aha moments for several community college presidents, and this was actually rolled out by the Secretary of Education, and he did receive some good pushback. I'm not sure if it's going to change the results of the funding, but the notion here is that even at the state level, we sometimes we struggle to really make the point in such a way that it's embraced by the policymakers that we can ultimately get what we need or get more of resources that would be helpful. So this will be helpful, but I do think there's an equity issue when it comes to how the state decides to distribute the funding for some of these capital projects. And I'm on record for taking that position with the state, and hopefully in time we'll see some changes, especially now given the way the broader climate seems to be changing. I am not moving along here. Let's try to pull out. The other piece I wanted to share with you here. Okay, let me try that again. Everybody still playing along, you all out there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, bear with me. I'm
Sure. There you go.
okay, so that's up.
Yes.
Okay, good. The Board of Higher Education brought in Parthenon, Ernst & Young to do a sensitivity analysis of the community colleges and the state universities, driven in part by the new law that's in place. Is they have some heightened oversight of the financial situation of the private institutions across the state. That legislation was driven in part by what happened to Mount Ida when they basically closed up overnight. It's sort of a mechanism, safety net is in place to send up some warning notices if people are having financial difficulty. So Ernst & Young came in, they did a sensitivity analysis, they collected data from all of the finance offices. Thank you, Matt, for your help in turning this around on a very, very short notice. And then they combined all the data for the community colleges and the state universities with increasingly more hostile assumptions with what was happening in the marketplace in terms of state funding and in terms of enrollment, of which we have actually built the budget scenario that the board adopted in May around the base case that they were looking at. So the result is, when you look in total across all of the community colleges, you can see in this diagram the increasing negative cash flow. But the more telling piece is when they're looking at the get rid of that. When they look at the total scenario of the 15 community colleges under the first two cases, we only end up having one that runs into having liquidity or cash flow issues over the course of the year. And based on their methodology, it's pretty far into the year, so there is some time to take corrective action. Under the under the worst case scenario, there are actually 4 colleges that run into financial difficulty. The good thing that I just want everybody to take away today is that we are not in these 4 or these individual ones. We're still in a state of financial strength. So I think that's a good thing. And it's also, it's important to note that there are times when the Board of Higher Education does rise collectively to look at how we're doing. And if there needs to be some additional help, hopefully there'll be a mechanism that we can shore up those that are having some additional problems. One other piece I would share with you is, and this came up yesterday with an interview with a newspaper reporter. There's a lot of talk by many people about taking a gap year, and I know there's a lot of opinions on that. And one of the New York NYU professor, Scott Galloway, has been sort of making a market out of advocating that this would be a good time for students to take a gap year. And my response has been 180 degrees opposite. I think it's the absolute worst time to take a gap year, especially to step away completely from higher education. The job market is pretty consistently bad. And if you look at what happened today, we're up another 1.5 million claims in unemployment. The notion that people are going to travel, this is not the time to do your backpacking trip through Europe. And then also the case here is when you think about the gap year and the way it's being construed here, it really becomes an option for the families and the household of means. And when you're into more financially austere conditions, it's not a viable option. And the key here is, and I've told this to several students, and I think I've said it several times in this forum, is that we don't get a do-over when this pandemic is done. We don't get to add another year on at the end and just go on from there. Part of education is navigating through the challenges you face on any given day. And that's where we are right now. So it becomes a question of how do we mind the gap and then move forward. And even if people are so motivated to volunteer and come up with a nice volunteer opportunity, I would really encourage them to stay in school, continue to take that course and move forward. And the other piece that I have been harping on in quite a few locations of late is that enrollment is down for us as it is for most of our partners out there in the community college world, based on where we traditionally are at this time for fall semester. And one of the reasons we know it's down is, K-12 closed out early and some of our processes couldn't be played out with the students in the high schools. But more so than that, we're in an environment right now where so many schools have not provided the clarity as to what the fall semester is actually going to be. And many schools have provided some interesting answers that they're going to be open in the fall, but there's I think there's a severe difference in opinion on what that means. So our projection continues to be, as we move closer to the start of the semester, when those prospective students that just graduated from high school are dealing with the question of, hey, this university I was looking at isn't what it was in February. And when we have people that are looking to return to universities saying, do I need to go back if it's all online? Is that the best option for me? And then as well as the people that are already here and engaged, are returning students, working with them to re-engage so that they will continue their education as well. So I think there's this moment that we continue to see more clarity as to what's happening in the fall semester. And, you know, we continue to have these, I would call them these wake-up moments where, you know, I suppose the mind suggests that this has been going on, it seems like forever. And when you look at it, it's really in a 4-month time frame, we've gone from closing to trying to manage forward. So is the expectation reasonable to assume that this is going to be finished and complete so that students can return to the life that they had in February? And my response is it's not going to be what it was in February. And we provide a very viable alternative to enable students to continue on, to stay home, to continue to stay around the family, the group that's likely of least risk moving forward, because we know we have a virus that so far 90% of the population apparently has not been exposed to. So I think on many fronts, we are a very strong option and opportunity for students moving forward. And my hope is that as we continue to meet people, talk to people, have the opportunity to maybe sway some thinking for their decisions in the fall, that we remind people that, you know, you need to stay engaged in your education. There's no time to take a gap. So on that note, I will just wrap up with one other item here. Let's see if I can load this. This is a shout out to Professor Darren Stocker for his recently published, hot off the press article on resiliency in the Changing Times book. It was just published this year. And in it, talking about timeliness, Darren is addressing the issues of mental health among our first responders, and in particular, the challenges that they face with the stresses of the job, and how they attempt to remedy that, and sometimes not in the most correct way. So a very timely article, given what's happening in the world, and a shout out to Darren for his success in getting published. All right. Now I have to see if I can pull this down and see faces again. All right. Any questions? I see a few people are smiling, so that must be good. Oh, that's a tough crowd.
President Cox, I've had a couple of calls from students in the medical assisting program that were concerned about their clinical and how could they, is that going to be part of this, the group that is coming back to do some of their clinical experiences?
Mitzi, let me shift over to Arlene. I think that's on a longer timeline, but Arlene might have a better detail.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mitzi. Right now, not yet. That is not during the summer. It's just going to be those in the tri-level nursing program, the phlebotomy, EKG group, and EMT. We're waiting on word from other areas, from other disciplines regarding their clinicals right now. A lot of times, actually all the time, we're waiting on just the employers who accept the students for clinicals, but also on regulatory and accrediting agencies that put certain restrictions on the clinicals under a pandemic. But as soon as we know, Gwen will absolutely let us all know once her students are able to go back.
Chuck, how's the IT world?
There I go. Hello. The IT world is going very well. We're moving ahead, and it's nice to see more people on campus. It's been a bit lonely, but that may be a personal issue on my part. So no, things are progressing well, and we're hopeful for the future.
Nice.
Rick got, you did see Rick got the aviation program. He got that all set up, so they'll be ready for business.
For Monday.
So that is good. It's a very good thing.
Yeah, thank you all for your work with that. We're very excited to bring cohort 6 back to finish up their labs.
I have a question, if I may, and maybe this is probably directed to Arlene, but I don't know, maybe anybody. I'm sure I'm not the first one to bring this up, but is there a plan to figure out which classes that we offer in the fall will be synchronous and which one will be asynchronous? I think that perhaps part of the students' hesitation to register for classes is that they don't know exactly what's going to happen. And I think once we make that decision and we let students know, maybe we'll get a bump in enrollment.
I think you're absolutely right.
So actually what we've done, Sergio and President Cox's courses are listed in the program on the website as either being remote, online, or hybrid. And online courses are what we traditionally call our online courses, those that go through the online course development, and those are asynchronous. The synchronous ones are the remote classes where you meet in a Zoom or live streaming room during the times that are scheduled on the calendar. So please go through the website. I would love your feedback on the definitions, because certainly whenever we try to define something like that and try to be very succinct, it may be that we're losing something in translation there. So those courses are already identified. You can see it on the course schedule where it says online, online. That means that is an online course. Online remote means it's a formerly face-to-face class that we're moving onto Zoom.
So the online remote are synchronous.
Correct.
Is that my
So
understanding? Okay. I thought for some reason I thought that faculty had the option to change their previously face-to-face class to either synchronous or asynchronous class, depending on their what their preference was. So, is my understanding now that all the face-to-face have to be synchronous?
That's how we're defining remote. Remote are the synchronous courses, formerly face-to-face, online or asynchronous, that have gone through the online course development. And then several of you have moved to offering courses hybrid. So those are courses where part of the class at some point in the semester, students are coming on, a group of students are coming on to campus. So right now we have several science classes, fine and performing arts classes. I know Dave shared with me that some of the College 101 courses will start on campus because the course is about the college experience, and then move on to remote. So those are we're identifying as the hybrid classes. And I think we have about 27 sections right now of courses that are identified as hybrid.
Thank you.
Could you address the labs and how those are going to work?
Sure. So right now, I'm looking at my list. I think it's about 8 sciences classes that we're having on hybrid. And right now, I know some of the faculty members are still working out the details, but just in general, what some faculty members are doing is that half of the class will come to campus, because right now we're working under the governor's limit of what are we up to, 12 in a room, 10 in a room? And so half of the class will come onto campus to do the lab in our labs, and then with remote distancing, with masks, and appropriate any other PPE that's needed. And then the other half during that same time period, we'll be doing the lab virtual. We'll be doing a virtual lab. Several faculty members this summer are piloting what we call Lab in a Box, where students, portions of a lab were ordered, placed in a box, and distributed to students in those classes. So then they could be also working on that at home. Then there's a switch. The next group of students, the group of students that did the virtual lab will now come onto campus. The students who came onto campus would do their labs virtually. So it is a very, I really appreciate the time because it is a very complicated situation, given the limited number we can have in a room, given the size of our rooms. But I feel that for those of the faculty members who have developed their labs that way, it is I think a very thorough way of making sure that all the students in that class have had time in a lab. And we focused many of the science courses, we focused on several of them, I shouldn't say many, are those that are required for those students who are applying into our dental hygiene program and nursing program. So we want to make sure that before they submit their application, they've had experience in a lab.
Can you address, like, if they're synchronous, the labs are synchronous and the student lives in Plymouth and then, you know, they have a lab 10 minutes later?
Question. That was a question that Dean Crampton asked me, and those will be the moments when something that would fall under synchronous. So one of the things for folks who may not know, science labs tend to happen right after the lecture. So if they're synchronous, meaning they're doing their Zoom live streaming at home, and they live in Plymouth or elsewhere, unless they live across the street, how do they get to campus on time for the lab? So we have talked about making exceptions for those periods. So we make sure that the students have the lecture, but it may not be synchronous because the need for the lab to have right now, the way we have scheduled labs are right after. So we've made some exceptions there. If you have any questions after this, please feel free to email me, give me a call and let me know. I really appreciate everyone's willingness throughout this entire process to really be creative on how we deliver our education thoroughly, purposefully, but also carefully. We do have to make sure that we get the information and the learning done, but we also have to make sure that we are careful with our students, with our health, and with our students' health.
Just a reminder, commencement is scheduled for September 1st, and we're looking at it as an event that will occur in the Tilden, based on the initial responses that we've had from students and their attendance.
Donna Alexander, you raised your hand. You're able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mia.
You're welcome.
Hi, John. I'm going to try to ask this in a way that doesn't make it a resume generating event for myself. In your last forum, you said that if someone had a medical reason not to return to campus or had a child care issue or was taking care of an elder parent, they would be able to continue to telework if that was possible. Has there been any more thought or policy written on this and how we go about requesting this?
There is more directive that has come out through the General Counsel's office. And I would say the best way is to talk to HR so that we can work with individual needs and see what would be eligible.
Okay, thank you.
And Paul Alexander is raising his hand.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. What's come out as the advice across higher education has been obviously the continuation to support remote work wherever possible, but a very clear distinction between how employers, in particular how colleges and universities, will address the presentation of risk factors versus the presentation of diagnosed health conditions. When it comes to risk factors would include a general and understandable fear about everything that's happened since March. That's a risk factor. Age over 65, risk factor. Caring for an elderly relative, risk factor. When it comes to risk factors, the advice, certainly we want to look at every instance individually, as President Cox has suggested. However, when it comes to risk factors, an accommodation to allow someone to work at home where a position really cannot be handled remotely is likely less advisable than an accommodation conversation with an employee who presents with a diagnosed medical health condition. So that's a general sense of what we're beginning to look at. Is anything, hard and fast and carved in stone at this point? No. But it's important to at least present the image of risk factors as those things that are not likely to generate an accommodation from the college or an employer versus a diagnosed health condition that would be more likely to generate such a dialogue.
And earlier in this forum, I heard that the day to start returning to campus is July 20th. Will there be forms available for us to bring to our doctors to fill out if we're asking for an accommodation prior to July 20th?
I would not expect a form. I think if there is a conversation with your doctor where the doctor presents a diagnostic assessment that she or he has made in terms of a risk based on your health profile in coming to campus, that will be presented to HR. I want to say two things immediately about that. First, that information is kept within HR. It is not shared with your supervisor and would not be under any circumstance. And once that information is presented, then the dialogue begins about the propriety of work from home, staggered work hours, something that can be done to address that concern. And again, when it comes to risk factors, as the president mentioned earlier, there are a number of things that the college is doing to address the concern of employees who are presenting with risk factors and those that are not, such as the campus buildings will remain secured, so there's not direct access to the public. We are going to be wearing masks all the time. There is the strong recommendation to wash your hands. We are committed to social distancing. We are modifying workspaces and classrooms to address the social distancing concerns. So the college's position to address risk factors is something that is very active and content rich, but that's the position the college is taking. But back to your question, will there be a specific form? No. It's something that you would discuss with your physician. And then once that's presented to human resources, we get into a dialogue about the propriety of the accommodation if necessary.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm looking on my screen for a WA 114950's iPhone. And somebody has their hand up.
Marianne Santos, is that you?
Oh, it's me.
Oh.
Yes, okay.
I don't have your name. There you are.
I am. I just had a question about opening day. If you think it's going to be on Zoom or if you think we're going to be in person in September.
Did you hear me drop my crystal ball a little earlier in this show?
Yeah, no, I figure you really miss me and you want me in, so I figured I'll be there for you.
Yeah, I would say plan on being here in person, and if that changes, we'll make adjustments. But even if we do it out in a parking lot where everybody is socially distanced, there's some creative mechanisms that we might be able to try. I think it would be it would be good if we're all physically here.
I just need to plan for boat tickets, so I want to get myself over on that boat from the vineyards. That's my concern.
I'll bring my kayak over. You can use that.
Okay, awesome. Awesome, John. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions for the good? All right. Well, everybody have a great 4th of July, and then enjoy the humidity and get some rest.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
See ya.
Bye. Hey, look
Bye, thank you.
at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Deb.